Welcome to Tech Talk 2020 with Sanjay Parker, the show where we get smarter together. I'm your humble tech host, Sanjay Parker. I'm here with Mike Carswell to talk about all things technology related for your home, your business, and your life. We've got an exciting show for you today, and it's part 3 of a 3-part series on personal tech. All about virtual reality today.
Ooh, check that out. Hi, guys. This is Mike Carswell, and I'm glad that you joined us here on Tech Talk 2020. We're excited about some of the things we've been covering, and we're excited about tonight. If you want to talk to us tonight during the show, hit us with a tweet on Twitter. Those of you who are tweeting out there, it's wonderful when you do that at Tech Talk 2020. And also, you can join us on our Facebook page, which is also Tech Talk 2020. Love to hear from you during the show, after the show. And that's another thing about our show is that if you don't catch us live, you can catch us anytime on Facebook and listen in. It'll be awesome.
Always catch us live because the opposite of that is not catching us in a good spot.
Well, you want to catch us dead?
I didn't want to say that. So, Mike, remember the movies, the old sci-fi movies and the old promises where you'd walk into a room and you'd see all these objects and interact with these things. And maybe I'm imagining this, but there's these movies where you would, really be able to interact with things that really weren't there. It would feel like, wow, there's a waterfall, or look at this, there's a whole bunch of gold bars and things I can do. Do you remember that?
A little bit. But let me, I'm trying to think which movie that was. That's fine. Maybe it was a movie you saw. No, honestly, though, I mean, before we step into that, which is, great, definitely we want to go into virtual reality. I just think our listeners need to be reminded gently that we have covered a lot of topics on this show. We talked about 3D printing. We've talked about Teslas, which is autonomous driving. Sorry about that. We've talked about drones and their effect in our lives. We've talked about the Internet of Things, where one day my coffee maker is going to talk to my washing machine, and my washing machine is going to talk to the dryer.
That day was last week.
Okay, that's right. and we've talked about even cybersecurity, and we've touched on last week about cutting your cable cord. There's so many interesting topics, how technology is changing our lives. So I just want to kind of remind the listeners out there and the viewers on Ustream that you guys can expand and let's get smarter together. Just take a few moments and visit our Facebook page. It'll be a great education for you. So let's go back to your movie.
That's awesome. Thank you. So that's what the virtual reality promise is today. You put on one of these headsets and you are teleported, if you will, into like the Star Trek analogy, right? And
yes.
You're in another world. And that world is there for your viewing. You can look around. Today you can interact with objects. Your brain is tricked into feeling like you're actually there. And I'll tell you guys how that happens in a little bit.
Okay.
Now, that's virtual reality.
Okay, so virtual reality also would be sometimes you watch a video on YouTube or another place, or you see a roller coaster. And even though you're not on the roller coaster, if you look at that screen, you kind of feel like you are. And that funky feeling you get, or I don't know if to define it as funky, but that empty feeling that you get right in the gut of your tummy sometimes when you're on a roller coaster. Is that what you're talking about, virtual reality?
Totally, because it's a whole sensory experience. Now, Mike, you might say that most kids today already live in a virtual reality world on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, where they carefully curate their views of the world and interact with people with the same views. But really, virtual reality is a 3-dimensional simulation. Usually it's with a headset that you wear today. And what this headset does is it blocks out anything from the real world. So your whole set of view is all in that virtual world. So it blocks out any other light, any other sensory items. Instead of just looking into a screen, now you're only seeing that virtual reality. And so it's an entirely computer-generated scene, an environment. So in other words, you can be on Earth, but you can actually feel like you're on Mars.
You know what's funny? I think about the equation I have is here. So I grew up in the 70s. I was a kid in the 70s. And we used to play football all the time, okay? And I remember running down the field, and I didn't have, in the backyard when we were playing with our friends and everything. And I'm running, and I'm feeling like I got shoulder pads on in my brain, I'm kind of running. And I'm mocking the guys that I saw on This Week in Pro Football. I'm pretending that I'm this fast wide receiver running. So the funny thing that came along when video games came in, no longer did I have to pretend to be that guy and physically run. I could control him and be that guy with my thumbs.
Yep. I
The kids that today, they don't, I don't know if they quite experience some of the things that we did in the 70s when we tried to pretend to be someone where they actually can pretend to be someone with their thumbs. So virtual reality, I'm assuming, is even taking us further.
Absolutely. And there's certainly less left to the imagination, but think about your brain actually getting tricked into thinking you're somewhere else. For example, with virtual reality, if you walk and it looks like a toy, but you put on something like the Oculus Rift, and I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay.
You walk to the edge of a virtual cliff and look down, you will get vertigo.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, if you're in a virtual world sitting at a desk, you will reach out and try to touch objects. Now, even if the objects don't look 100% real, it could just be computer blocky things.
Sure.
But since you're moving around and your perspective is changing and you're looking up and down and it's tracking your head movement, it's tracking how you're moving closer and further from an object, you actually feel like you're in that world.
So when I go to that world, again, I can appreciate it being for entertainment purposes. So tell me how we're going to use this thing and what's it for.
Well, yes, and I definitely want to get into that.
Yep.
And one of the things I want to tell the viewers is there's a difference between virtual reality and augmented reality. So
Okay.
one of the things that came out, so you've got Microsoft HoloLens, and it's something that you wear, and what it does is it brings in part of the real world with the virtual world. That's augmented reality. For example, I can walk down the street today with an app on my iPhone, and I can look through the iPhone camera, and instead of seeing just a building, I'll see perhaps how that building looked 100 years ago. There's apps that do that. So I can look around, and now I've got an augmented version of reality. It will bring up historical facts, or it will go ahead and show me specials that are happening, in that area, or coupons when I'm just showing my camera around. That's augmented reality. But virtual reality is a completely immersive piece of it.
I was talking to a guy the other day. He was probably pushing 85. And I said, Joe, libraries are going to become a thing of the past. And he goes, I said, even he was reading the newspaper that morning. I said, newspapers aren't gone yet, but they're on their way out.
Why are you so mean to people?
Well, he won't be around long anyway. No,
my goodness. He's really nice, this Mike guy.
I said it's on its way out. I didn't say it was gone yet. But it was really funny how he says, I like my paper. I said, I like your paper too. I read it. I used to be in the fish wrap every day when I was an athlete. However, I said, unfortunately, it seems like those things are going away. Everything is so instantaneous. Everything is so, it's just changing so quickly. So real quick, what the virtual reality thing and pointing, the thought of taking my phone, aiming it at an object and getting data thrown back to me about the historical context of that building is kind of blowing me away.
Yeah, and that's augmented reality, and that's easy to do today with a regular phone. Virtual reality, let me tell you how this came in, and you speak about how fast things change. So probably about 5 years ago, there was a kid. He was, at the time, maybe 15 years old.
Was his name Sanjay Parker?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, this guy's much, much smarter than Sanjay Parker. His name is Palmer Luckey.
Oh, okay.
And he used to love virtual reality headsets. He loved to play video games and pretend he was actually on a battlefield, right, shooting people, or he was actually in a tank. So he was a kid, so he couldn't afford all of these fancy headsets. He'd wait until a year or two when they went out of fashion, and he'd buy them. So $2,000 headsets for $50 he'd buy. So he collected all of these. He loved them. He started building his own. At the same time, this is just a couple of years ago, Samsung and Sony were working on optics. The problem with virtual reality headsets then was that you would have a black box around the screen that you're looking at, even if you wore it on your head. So your brain would never really be tricked into thinking you're in another world because you would see black all around the screen.
Got you.
So Samsung, LG, Sony, they're spending millions of dollars developing optics and lenses that curve around your head but don't distort it and do all this stuff. He took a simpler approach. What he did was he took this cardboard box and he put two little old smartphone screens in there. And so you still had the black box, but what he did is he took magnifying glasses and he distorted the field of view so you could see 270 degrees around. When you put the magnifying lenses in front of the screens, it distorted the image. It didn't look good. So instead of trying to create optics that didn't distort, he programmed his computer to pre-distort the image. So when it came through his little lenses, it was perfect.
Now, he didn't do that at 15, though.
He did that at 15, and at 16, he sold his company to Facebook for $2 billion with a B.
What if he has a girlfriend?
I think you're married, Mike.
Oh, no. I didn't mean it that way. $2 billion.
$2 billion,
16-year-old guy.
Will make you think. But anyway, so right, he's 18 now. Facebook bought it. Oculus Rift is a toy and tool, and now it's become an enterprise-level, game-changing military, healthcare, everything tool, and we'll talk about that. Now, just I always like to quote actual stats, what's going on. So here's the market. I just got this today from my favorite statistics site called Statista, and it's a predicted market size of virtual reality software in 2025 and use cases. Healthcare. Okay, we're going to have a $5 billion market in 2025. This total market is going to be about $35 billion, they're saying, in the year 2025. Healthcare, engineering, so $4.7 billion. Real estate, $2.6 billion.
With a B.
Yeah, B. Military, $1.4 billion. Video games, that's a big one, $11.6 billion. Here's something new, too.
Okay.
Live events, and I'm going to talk about why that's so big.
Oh.
That's going to be $4.1 billion.
I know I like those B's as well as you do, but I think still we're going to have to make sure people understand what we're talking about wearing a headset. I don't know that many of my circle of friends that own a virtual reality headset, except for you, of course.
Yeah, and I got a pre-release one, and
Right.
they're not that popular right now. But come July,